The Wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Stoic Meditations for Daily Practice, Discipline and Inner Peace, Ancient Roman Philosophy for Modern Men and Leaders, by Aurelian Hart. Introduction. Imagine a small, flickering lamp sitting on a wooden table. The air is freezing, and the smell of wet earth and wood smoke fills the room. Outside, thousands of soldiers are sleeping in tents, their armor stacked nearby. They are tired, hungry, and far from home. Beyond the camp, an enemy army waits in the dark woods, ready to attack. Inside the tent, a man sits alone. He is the leader of the greatest empire the world has ever known. He has the power to take a life with a single word, or build a city with a stroke of a pen. But he isn't writing orders for his generals. He isn't counting his gold. He is writing a letter to the only person he can truly control, himself. The letter starts with a simple thought. It says that tomorrow he will meet people who are rude, ungrateful, and mean. He tells himself not to be angry with them. He reminds himself that they don't know any better. He writes that he must stay kind and do his job, because that is what a man is supposed to do. This man was Marcus Aurelius. He was the emperor of Rome nearly 2,000 years ago. He didn't write these words for us to read. He never meant for them to be a book. They were his private notes, his way of staying sane while the world around him was falling apart. He was fighting a war that wouldn't end, a plague was killing his people, and his own body was failing him. Yet in the middle of all that noise, he found a way to be still. Today we don't live in tents, and we don't usually have to fight off armies in the woods. But when you wake up and see 50 notifications on your phone, it can feel like an attack. When your boss sends an angry email at dinner time, or when you're stuck in traffic and someone cuts you off, your heart starts to race. You feel that heat in your chest. You feel like you are losing your grit. Most of us spend our lives reacting. We are like a ball in a pinball machine, bouncing off every obstacle. If the weather is bad, we are in a bad mood. If someone says something mean, we feel hurt. If the stock market goes down, we feel poor. We let the world outside decide how we feel inside. This is an exhausting way to live. It leaves you feeling like a passenger in your own life, watching the days go by while you just try to survive the next hour. You want to be a good father, a strong leader, and a calm man. But it's hard to do that when you feel like you are drowning in to-do lists and digital noise. This book is about a different way to live. It is based on an old way of thinking called Stoicism. It isn't about being a robot or having no feelings. It is about building a fortress inside your mind. It is about learning that while you cannot control what happens to you, you can always control how you respond. By the time you finish these pages, the goal is for you to stop being a reactive responder. You won't be the person who snaps at his kids because work was stressful. You won't be the person who loses sleep over a problem he can't fix. Instead, you will become an inner sovereign. You will be a man who owns himself. You will have a clear sense of what matters and the discipline to let go of what doesn't. You will find that even when the world is chaotic, you can remain as still as a rock in a stormy sea. The waves may crash against you, but you stay exactly where you are. This isn't just a nice idea. It is a set of tools that has been tested by the most powerful leaders and the bravest soldiers for centuries. It worked for a Roman emperor, and it works for people today who have everything on the line. To see how this works in the real world, we should look at someone who is living through the struggle right now. Elias Thorne is 42 years old, and he is tired. He lives in a nice house in the suburbs of Chicago with his wife, Sarah, and their 2 kids, Leo and Maya. On paper, Elias is a success. He is a senior project manager at a big firm downtown. He makes good money, drives a nice car, and has a title that people respect. But Elias doesn't feel like a success. Right now, it is 7:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. Elias is sitting in his office. The walls are made of glass, and through them, he can see the lights of the city. Usually, he loves this view. Tonight, he hates it. It feels like a cage. He is staring at his computer screen. There are 142 unread emails in his inbox. Every few seconds, a little box pops up in the corner of the screen with a new message. Each one feels like a tiny weight being added to his shoulders. A deadline was missed. A client is unhappy. A coworker is asking for a quick call that he knows will take an hour. His phone buzzes on the desk. It's a text from Sarah. It's a photo of a plate of tacos, dinner. The caption says, "Maya missed you at her dance practice. We're eating now. See you whenever." Elias feels a sharp sting of guilt. He can picture his kitchen. It's warm and smells like lime and cilantro. He can hear his kids laughing. He wants to be there. But he also feels like if he leaves right now, everything at work will break. He feels like he is the only thing holding his team together. He feels trapped. He is hurry sick. He is always rushing to the next thing, but he never feels like he's actually getting anywhere. When he is at work, he feels guilty for not being with his family. When he is at home, he is staring at his phone, thinking about work. He is never truly present anywhere. Elias believes that if he just works a little harder, or stays an hour later, or fixes one more problem, he will finally reach a place of peace. He thinks peace is something you earn by finishing your work. He is wrong. Peace isn't something that happens when the world stops moving. Peace is something you carry with you into the middle of the noise. As Elias reaches into his desk for a snack, his hand brushes against an old, dusty book. It's a small, green hardback. He remembers his old mentor giving it to him years ago. On the cover, in gold letters, it says, "Meditations." He opens it to a random page and reads a single sentence. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Elias sighs and closes the book. He thinks it sounds nice, but he doesn't see how a dead Roman can help him with a software glitch or a missed dance practice. He doesn't know it yet, but he is about to start a journey that will change the way he breathes, the way he works, and the way he looks at his children. In the chapters ahead, we are going to follow Elias as he learns to apply these ancient lessons to his modern life. We will see him struggle, and we will see him grow. Along the way, we will learn from the giants of history who used these same secrets to survive much worse than a busy office. We will learn from Epictetus, a man who was born as a slave but became more free than the men who owned him. We will see how he used the dichotomy of control to stay happy even when he was in chains. We will walk with Admiral James Stockdale, who spent years as a prisoner of war. He survived because he understood that his captors could take his food and his clothes, but they could never take his character. We will look over the shoulder of Marcus Aurelius as he leads an empire through a plague. We will see how he kept his head clear while everyone around him was panicking. This book is organized into 20 steps. Each one is a tool you can use today. We will start by looking at the 3 pillars of the Stoic mindset. These are the foundations of everything else. You will learn how to change your perception so that bad news doesn't ruin your day. You will learn how to take action with purpose and how to build a will that cannot be broken. We will talk about the inner citadel. This is the part of your mind that stays calm no matter what. You will learn how to build the walls of that citadel so that the opinions of others or the stress of your job can't get inside. You will learn how to master your morning. Instead of reaching for your phone and letting the world tell you how to feel, you will learn how to set your own intention. You will learn the premeditatio malorum, a way of looking at the day ahead so that nothing can surprise you or knock you off balance. We will explore the 4 virtues of a leader: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. These aren't just big words. They are practical guides for making decisions. When you know your values, you don't have to waste energy wondering what to do. You just do what is right. We will also tackle the big fears. We will talk about memento mori, the fact that life is short. Most people find this scary, but you will learn why it is actually the best way to find joy and focus. It helps you stop worrying about small things and start living for the things that truly matter. Finally, we will see Elias reach the end of his path. We will see him face a major crisis, the kind that would have broken him before, and watch him handle it with a quiet, steady strength. Stoicism is not a set of rules you have to follow perfectly. It is a practice. It is like going to the gym for your mind. Some days you will be strong, and some days you will trip. That's okay. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to be better than you were yesterday. The world is not going to get quieter. The emails will keep coming. People will still be difficult. The weather will still be bad. But you can change. You can become the man who is the master of his own soul. You can find the same peace that Marcus Aurelius found in his cold tent all those years ago. You are holding the keys to your own fortress. It is time to step inside. Chapter 1. 3 Pillars of the Stoic Mindset. The library in post-war Paris was a place of heavy silence. The year was 1950, and the city was still shaking off the gray dust of a world gone mad. Inside the building, the air smelled of old paper, leather bindings, and the faint scent of floor wax. Pierre Hadot sat at a small wooden desk, surrounded by stacks of books that had survived the fires of the previous decade. He was a man who spent his days in the past, but his heart was very much in the present. Like everyone else who had lived through the 1940s, he was looking for a way to make sense of a world that felt broken. For years, people had looked at philosophy as a hobby for people who liked to argue about big words in dusty classrooms. It was something you studied to pass a test, not something you used to fix a broken heart or a worried mind. But as Hadot turned the pages of a centuries-old diary written by a Roman emperor, he realized something that would change how the modern world looks at ancient wisdom. He realized that Marcus Aurelius wasn't trying to write a textbook. He was trying to write a survival guide. Hadot noticed that the emperor kept coming back to the same 3 ideas. He wasn't just wandering through his thoughts. He was using a specific system to keep his mind steady while his empire faced plagues, wars, and betrayal. Hadot called these the 3 pillars. They were not just theories, they were spiritual exercises designed to be practiced every single hour of the day. The first pillar was about how we see the world. The second was about how we act in the world. The third was about how we handle the things the world does to us. To Marcus Aurelius, these 3 things were the only tools a person needed to stay sane in a world of chaos. Hadot realized that philosophy wasn't about talking, it was a way of living. It was a mode of existing in the world that had to be practiced at each instant. The first pillar, perception. The train car was crowded, and the air was thick with the smell of wet coats and old coffee. Elias Thorne sat by the window, his head leaning against the cold glass. The metro train hummed as it moved through the suburbs toward downtown Chicago. Usually, this was the time Elias spent worrying about his 9 o'clock meeting, or the 142 emails waiting for him. But today, he had the small book he found in his bag. A few rows back, a man was shouting into his cell phone. He was complaining about a bill, his voice rising with every sentence. Other passengers were huffing, rolling their eyes, or turning up the volume on their headphones. Elias felt that familiar spark of anger in his chest. Why can't people be respectful, he thought. This guy is ruining my morning. Then he looked down at the page in his lap. He read about the discipline of assent. Stoics believe that nothing that happens to us is bad or good on its own. Everything is just an event. A rainstorm isn't bad. It's just water falling from the sky. We are the ones who call it bad because we didn't want to get our shoes wet. When the man on the train yells, it is just a sound. It is vibrating air hitting Elias's ears. The bad part only happens when Elias tells himself, "This man is being rude and I shouldn't have to listen to this." Elias took a breath. He tried to strip away the labels. He stopped telling himself a story about a rude man. Instead, he just heard a man talking. The noise didn't change, but the knot in Elias's stomach started to loosen. He realized that the noise wasn't making him angry. His opinion of the noise was making him angry. For the first time in months, he didn't arrive at the station feeling like he'd already lost a fight. He had practiced the first pillar. The second pillar, action. Once you see the world clearly, you have to decide what to do. This is the discipline of action. It's not enough to just be calm. You have to be useful. But the Stoics had a specific way of working. They believed we should try our best, but we should always remember that we don't control the final result. In the early 1900s, two brothers owned a small bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio. Wilbur and Orville Wright didn't have much money. They didn't have college degrees. What they had was an obsession with the sky. At the time, very famous scientists were trying to build flying machines with millions of dollars in government funding. Those scientists were failing in front of cameras and crowds. The Wright brothers went to a lonely beach in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The wind was biting, and the sand got into everything. They didn't go there to be famous. They went there to work. Their discipline of action was about doing the right thing, one step at a time, without letting failure stop them. Every time they built a glider, it crashed. Most people would have seen a crash as a sign to quit, but the Wright brothers looked at a crash as data. They didn't get emotional about the wood breaking. They just asked, why did it break? They focused on the effort, not the ego. They weren't trying to beat the other scientists. They were trying to solve the problem of flight. In 1903, when their little plane finally lifted off the ground for 12 seconds, it wasn't a miracle. It was the result of thousands of actions taken with a clear head. They did their duty to the task. They didn't worry about whether the world was watching. They just did the work that was in front of them. This is the heart of the second pillar, doing what is right, right now, with everything you've got. The third pillar, will. The final pillar is the hardest. It is the discipline of will. This is how we deal with things we cannot change. It is about accepting the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. Viktor Frankl was a doctor who found himself in the middle of a nightmare. During World War II, he was taken to a concentration camp. He lost his family, his home, and his career. He was stripped of everything a human being thinks they need to survive. He was cold, starving, and surrounded by death every single day. Most people would say that a man in that position has no power. But Frankl discovered the third pillar in the darkest place on earth. He realized that even when the guards took his clothes and his food, they could not take his will. They could not force him to think a certain way. He watched some men give up and die of a broken heart. He watched others share their last piece of bread with someone who was even hungrier. He realized that the one thing no one can take from you is your ability to choose your attitude. This is the discipline of will. It is the inner strength that says, I cannot change what is happening to me, but I can change how I feel about it. Frankl survived by focusing on his purpose. He decided that he would live so he could tell the world what he had learned. He accepted his situation. He didn't waste energy complaining about how unfair it was, because unfair didn't matter in the camp. What mattered was staying strong on the inside. He turned his suffering into a tool for growth. He showed that even in a cage, a person can be free if their mind is disciplined. Putting the pillars together. These three pillars, perception, action, and will, work together like a tripod. If you take one away, the whole thing falls over. If you have perception but no action, you are just a calm person who never helps anyone. If you have action but no perception, you are a busy person who is constantly stressed and making mistakes. If you have will but no action, you are someone who accepts bad things but never tries to make the world better. Marcus Aurelius used these pillars every morning when he woke up. He knew he was going to have a hard day. He knew people would lie to him. He knew he might get sick. He used his perception to remind himself that those people couldn't actually hurt his character. He used his action to do his job as emperor with justice and kindness. And he used his will to accept whatever happened, whether he won the war or lost his health, with a steady heart. Elias Thorne didn't know it yet, but he was starting to build his own tripod. As he stepped off the train and walked toward his office building, he didn't feel the usual heavy weight in his shoulders. He looked up at the tall glass towers of Chicago. Usually, they made him feel small and unimportant. Today, he just saw them as buildings. He saw the people rushing past him not as obstacles, but as fellow humans all trying to get through their day. He walked into the lobby and saw his reflection in the shiny black elevator doors. He looked like the same guy, the same blue tie, the same messenger bag. But on the inside, something was shifting. He was starting to realize that his life wasn't a series of problems to be solved. It was a series of moments to be practiced. The elevator climbed to the 40th floor. The doors opened to the sound of phones ringing and people talking loudly about deadlines. The modern chaos was waiting for him. In the past, this would have been the moment Elias started to feel the hurry sickness take over. His heart would speed up, and he would start checking his watch every 2 minutes. Instead, he paused at his desk. He didn't open his laptop right away. He thought about the 3 pillars. Perception. The emails aren't an emergency. They are just words on a screen. Action. I will answer the most important one first, and I will do it carefully. Will. If the server crashes or the boss is unhappy, I will handle it when it happens. He sat down and began his day. He wasn't a reactive responder anymore. He was becoming something else. He was starting to build his inner citadel, a place of peace that no boss, no email, and no loud passenger could ever break into. Philosophy was no longer a boring book on a shelf. It was the air he breathed. It was the way he stood. It was the way he lived. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Chapter 2. Who is really in charge? Imagine a man named David. David is 40 years old, and he is a good man. He works hard at his job in a bank. He loves his 2 daughters. He tries to be a good neighbor. But lately, David feels like he is drowning in a stormy sea. Every morning, David wakes up and checks his phone. He sees news about the economy failing. He sees emails from his boss about a project that is behind schedule. He drives to work and someone cuts him off in traffic. David shouts at his steering wheel. His heart beats fast. By the time he sits at his desk, he is already exhausted. He feels like a leaf in the wind, blown around by things he cannot stop. David believes a very common lie. He believes that if he can just work a little harder, yell a little louder, or plan a little better, he can make the world behave. He thinks he can control his boss's mood. He thinks he can control the traffic. He thinks he can control whether his kids get sick. Because he cannot control these things, he feels like a failure. He feels like he is not the boss of his own life. This feeling of being trapped is what many men feel today. We think being a leader means being in charge of everything. But there was a man who lived a long time ago who knew a secret. He was a man who had no power at all over his own body, yet he was more in charge than any king. His name was Epictetus. He lived about 2,000 years ago in the Roman Empire. Epictetus was not born a leader. He was not born rich. He was born a slave. The man who owned nothing but his mind. Epictetus spent his early life in the city of Rome. He was owned by a man named Epaphroditus, who was a very powerful secretary to the Emperor Nero. In those days, being a slave meant you had no rights. You did not own your clothes. You did not own your time. You did not even own your own body. Your master could do whatever he wanted to you. Epictetus was physically weak. He walked with a limp because his leg had been broken. Some stories say his master broke it on purpose, just to show he could. Imagine being in that position. Imagine waking up every day knowing that another man decides when you eat, where you sleep, and whether you are hurt. David, our friend from the bank, gets upset about traffic. Epictetus lived in a world where his very life could be taken on a whim. But something strange happened. While Epictetus was a slave, his master allowed him to study philosophy. He listened to a great teacher named Musonius Rufus. Rufus taught that the mind is the only thing that truly belongs to a person. Epictetus began to look at his life. He realized that even though his master could chain his leg, no one could chain his thoughts. Even if his master told him to be sad, Epictetus could choose to be calm. Even if his master told him to be afraid, Epictetus could choose to be brave. Life is divided into 2 buckets. In the first bucket are things we do not control. This includes the weather, the past, what other people think of us, and even our own bodies, because we can get sick or hurt. In the second bucket are things we do control. There is only one thing in this bucket: our own choices, our thoughts, our goals, and how we respond to what happens to us. Epictetus called this the dichotomy of control. It sounds like a big word, but it just means the split. He realized that most people are miserable because they spend all their energy trying to change things in the first bucket. They try to fix the weather or force people to like them. When they fail, they get angry. Epictetus decided he would only care about the second bucket. He told his students that if you focus on what you control, you will never be blocked. You will never be a victim. You will be free, even if you are in chains. Eventually, Epictetus was set free. He became a famous teacher. Even the Emperor Hadrian came to visit him. He didn't have money or a big house. He owned a small hut with a straw mat and a clay lamp. But he was the most powerful man in Rome because he knew exactly who was in charge of his mind. The myth of the master plan. Most of us grow up believing a myth. We are told that if we are smart and work hard, we can control our success. We think that if we follow a certain plan, we will get the promotion, the perfect house, and the perfect family. This is a lie that makes us weak. It makes us believe that our happiness depends on the outcome of our work. Think about a professional athlete like Serena Williams. She is one of the greatest tennis players to ever live. If Serena Williams believed the myth of control, she would focus only on winning the trophy. But a trophy is in the first bucket. Why? Because she cannot control if her opponent plays the best game of their life. She cannot control if the wind blows the ball off course. She cannot control if the referee makes a bad call. If she only cared about the win, she would be a nervous wreck. She would be reactive. Instead, Serena focuses on what is in her power. She focuses on her practice. She focuses on her footwork. She focuses on her swing. She focuses on how she reacts when she loses a point. By focusing only on her process, the things she can control, she actually becomes more likely to win. But more importantly, she stays calm. If she plays a perfect game and still loses because her opponent was just slightly better, she can walk off the court with her head high. She did her part. The rest was up to the universe. We see this same thing in the business world. In 2008, there was a huge financial crisis. Banks were closing. People were losing their homes. It was a giant storm in the out-of-control bucket. There were two types of investors during that time. The first group was like David. They watched the news and panicked. They screamed at their computer screens. They sold their stocks when the prices were low because they were afraid. They tried to control the market by wishing it was different. They lost everything because their emotions were tied to things they couldn't touch. The second group used the wisdom of Epictetus. They looked at the chaos and said, I cannot control the global economy. I cannot control the housing market. What can I control? They realized they could control their own spending. They could control how they spent their time. They could choose to look for new opportunities while others were crying. These people didn't just survive. Many of them became much stronger. They didn't let the storm inside their heads be as loud as the storm outside. The myth tells us that control comes from power over others. The truth is that control comes from power over ourselves. Aurelius and the broken screen. Aurelius Thorne sat in a boardroom in the middle of Chicago. The room was beautiful. There were large windows that looked out over the city. The table was made of dark, polished wood. Aurelius was in charge of a very important project for a big bank. Today was the day he had to show his work to the bosses. He had worked for 6 months on this. He hadn't slept much. He was nervous. He wanted the bosses to think he was a genius. He wanted their approval. Just as Aurelius stood up to start his presentation, the big screen on the wall turned bright blue. Then it turned black. The computer had crashed. In the old days, Aurelius would have felt his face get red. He would have started sweating. He would have apologized 100 times. He would have felt like a failure because the technology broke. He would have been a reactive responder. But Aurelius had been reading the meditations of Marcus Aurelius and the stories of Epictetus. As the bosses started to whisper and look at their watches, Aurelius took a deep breath. He mentally drew 2 columns in his head. In the first column, the not my business bucket, he put the broken computer. He couldn't fix the hardware right this second. He couldn't control the fact that his bosses were annoyed. He couldn't go back in time and test the wires again. In the second column, the my business bucket, he put his next words. He put his posture. He put his voice. Aurelius didn't panic. He didn't even look at the screen again. He turned to the bosses and smiled. "It looks like the machines are taking a nap," Elias said calmly. "But I know this data by heart."